Alright, Ronan MMA, welcome back to the channel. Now, yesterday I watched the entirety of the UFC 285 Media Day. I pulled together a few storylines from that. You should probably subscribe just for the reason that I watched the entire UFC 285 Media Day, because while there were some interesting moments, the majority of it was extremely boring. So please like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. I will thank you in advance for your subscription, because I know that you're not the type of person that won't do the thing that they've already been thanked for. So thank you again, and let's get into it. I've taken a few notes here, just basic notes, and a few of the storylines I want to go over. So firstly, Cody Garbrandt. Dude, I'm a little concerned about Cody Garbrandt. He seems to me, and I could just be totally off here and reading into things way too much, but he seems to me to be a little on the depressed side or something. Like, I don't know what the best way to describe it was. Now, what's strange is that he spent a lot of time during his media day interviews talking about how his life is so much better now, and that it once was in shambles for all of his losses, which is, it is an excuse, and that's fine, but I'll get to that in a second. But he spent the majority of the time talking about how his life was in shambles, and going through a divorce and this and that, and now that his wife or his ex-wife and him have came to a conclusion on where they will live so that they can split custody and do things properly for their child and this and that he's much better now, which is all fine and good, and I appreciate people that are able to co-parent. I think it's obviously better if families stay together, but I don't know the circumstances of their relationship, so I would never say that he should have just stayed with her. But co-parenting's hard, so it's good that they're getting along. But he did have to up and move right away from his home and all of his training partners, and that he's been with since the very beginning, to move to Vegas because she's from Vegas, so that they can split custody. It's a noble thing to do, especially for a young man as hot-headed and, at times as immature as Cody Garbrandt. So I applaud him for at least trying to make his, he's trying to be in his kid's life. So that's commendable, regardless. But the whole time, his energy seemed to be very, very solemn. Like, I don't know how else best to describe it. And now maybe he's just calm or anxious and he doesn't like talking in front of the cameras or something, but it's weird, man, because when his life was allegedly in shambles, which I'm not saying that it wasn't, but when his life was in shambles, he was, way more upbeat, way more energetic, way more, involved in trash talk and stuff like this, which I don't know, maybe he was just trying to mask it, but his energy seemed way higher at like the Kai Kara France press conference, the pre-fight, obviously, when he's going back and forth with Sean O'Malley and stuff like that. And it was just strange, man, because you would think, and again, like, maybe he's just at peace and he's more calm and happy now, but if you were to look at his energy in the last few press conferences compared to this one, you would be like, what? Are you sure you're okay, sir? Are you sure? Should I call somebody to come and do a welfare check? Like, he seemed a little depressed. And he also, he did make some excuses, and he kept saying that the reason for those losses was because his life was in shambles and he wasn't in the best place and this and that and this and that. But I just don't buy that, man. Your Sun Sound knockout was during the time that you were allegedly going through all these hard times. And, it's like, no, there's a fight IQ issue, sir. You can't just get into firefights. Now, maybe he's just not very good at articulating his thoughts, and what he meant is that because of where his life was at, he was way more likely to engage in those kinds of fights, and now that he's at peace and happy, he's not going to do that, but that's all to be determined. I will say, him and his opponent both have a hard time speaking English properly, which is okay. But Cody Garbrandt, he was rambling a lot at certain points, and I was listening to his interview for what felt like 10 minutes, and then I realized only John Morgan had asked questions. So he still had the rest of the media members to ask his questions, and I went, Jesus, this is going to be a long one, but whatever. I really hope he gets this one done. I hope that he's not depressed and that I'm just off here and that he is just at peace or whatever. But there were a few moments and a few things that he said where I was like, that sounded like real CTE. But that's okay. He's still... This is why I liked Cody Garbrandt in the first place. First of all, when he had that Maddox kid who had been going through cancer or whatever that he brought up with him into the octagon and stuff, those were all sweet moments. And, you know, he continued to go see him outside. And it wasn't just like a one-time gimmick thing. Like, he was always checking in with his family, and he still goes and sees him today, and he treats him like a little brother, it seems, and it's really sweet. And then, you know, he pulls something out of his hat like that again. At the end of his interviews, he shouts out all the guys going to wrestle this weekend at his old high school, which I thought was so cool, man, because imagine being one of those kids. You're watching Media Day for the UFC, and you hear Cody Garbrandt shouting you out personally, like he had it pulled up on his phone, all of the kids, even the alternates, he shouted out, which I thought was really cool of him. One of the next or other storylines that I pulled out of here is, dude, poor Laura Sanko's husband, man. I don't care if they're in an open relationship. She is like, she has like no respect for him whatsoever, and neither do the goddamn media members. Okay? Because she is married. And there have been a lot of rumors about things that she may or may not have done. And she says that, you know, people think that the amount of people I've slept with to get where I'm at is, like, never ending. And then she goes and says not says something like this, but she acts in a way that does not help it whatsoever. Like, there was a while ago when Shavkat Rachmanov fought last, and she was getting all flustered talking about him. Ooh, he is so impressive, like fanning herself and shit and acting like, you know, like a smitten little schoolgirl. And, you know, one of the media members has the fucking gall to ask Shavkat if he's seen this and what he thinks about it. And Shavkat, in his own language and then through translation, said, yeah, anytime a woman adores a man, you have to love it. And he cracked a huge smile as soon as he was asked the question. And I thought it was a wholesome moment, because a lot of times we don't get to see that side of, like, those really hard, like, Easterners, I guess, especially because the language barriers there. I think that's why, compared to Khabib, Islam's a little refreshing, too, because he's got a sense of humor, and there's wholesome moments and stuff like that. But man, oh man, dude. If you are in an open relationship and you are aware that you are on TV, broadcasted in front of millions of people, can you tone it down a little bit for your poor husband's sake? Like, do you think she respects him even a little bit? I don't. And I felt horrible. But it was a funny moment, and I was glad the media member asked the question. But I just couldn't help but thinking about her husband in that moment. There were a lot of shoulder chips going around on this card. That's another thing that I noticed. This doesn't usually happen. Usually there's one or two per card where there's guys who feel ultimately, like, disrespected, I guess, in a way, and they come in with a chip on their shoulder, and they're coming there with the attitude that they're gonna spoil everyone's party and, you know, rain on their parade and stuff like that. But I noticed that there was a lot of them here. So we had Jamie Pickett, of course. Now, he was doing a good job at acting like he did not care, but he was not lying to himself, and he said multiple times, he said, you know, that I'm a test for Bo Nichols. I'm a test. And I know that, and blah, 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 blah. And I thought, okay, at least he's not lying to himself, you know? But they all try to act like they don't see the betting odds, and it's like, there's no way you don't, guy. Like, there's no way. I just don't believe it. They're everywhere. If you follow any MMA stuff, it's almost impossible to not come across. Even on, like, MMA Junkie, they'll put the odds down at the bottom of, like, a matchup or whatever. And he just, he's there to spoil the party. He said he thinks that everybody thinks he's going to lose and whatever. He said that he had no idea who Bo Nickal was. And in fairness, dude, before the Contender Series, I didn't either. I'm not a huge collegiate wrestling fan or whatever. It's just not my cup of tea. So I didn't really know who he was. But then since, obviously, I've known him. But apparently when he accepted the fight, he says he had no idea who he was. And then his coach all of a sudden started showing this immediate sense of urgency, and he went, what's going on? He goes, dude, do you not know who this guy is? And then showed him another shoulder chip being worn by Jeff Neal, okay, against Shavkat Rakhmonov. Now, I don't like when guys get entitled like the way it sucks calling guys entitled. Like, I understand that they feel that they've earned a title shot, but Vicente Luque is a great win, and the way that he did it was fantastic. The win that he has over Bilal Muhammad is aging better every time Bilal Muhammad steps in the cage. So in fairness, that's a very good win. And I understand that he had congestive heart failure before he fought Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, but that's the reason why you're not in talks for a title shot, right? Like, you got your ass beat by a 40-year-old. And while I understand, and I, of all people who love high-level striking, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson's one of my favorite guys to watch fight ever. And I respect and appreciate everything he does inside and outside the octagon. You can't be losing to Wonderboy and expecting a title shot before Wonderboy. It's a weird one. But he also, I believe, said that he didn't pay attention to the odds, but he feels a little disrespected, and he's, here to spoil everyone's parlays and this and that, which is fine. Like, it's a good attitude to have as long as you don't get overly emotional inside the cage, because Shavkat Rakhmonov is not going to get overly emotional. He won't even get emotional. He's like the calmest dude I've ever seen about to fight anywhere. He literally, like Michael Bisping said it about Jack Delamet Elena last, when they fought in Perth there. He looks like he's waiting for a bus. Shavkat Rakhmonov also looks like he's just waiting for a bus. And he's a scary dude, man. But Jeff Neal wasn't having it. He's there to spoil everyone's party. He says he's going to ruin your fucking parlay. He felt... Yeah, he said he feels a little disrespected and overlooked and things like that. So, more shoulder chips to go around. Valentina even looks like she might have one a little bit, because people won't stop talking about her fight with Tyler Santos, which was a close fight. I still think that she got the job done, but it was a close fight. And she looked beatable in that fight. And then also people keep bringing up Erin Blanchfield to her, who she says is the young puppy. And then she keeps saying, so the guy said, you said in an interview that you think she needs one more fight. And Valentina's, or more. And the guy's like, or more. Yeah, 1 or 2 more fights, she says. And then, they say, oh, well, I don't know if you heard this or not, but Dana said she may actually be next because they're having troubles getting Tyler Santos into the United States. And she goes, okay, I'll fight her, but she's not ready. And I was like, God damn, dude. Like, okay. She's just like big sister in all these girls. I thought it was a funny moment. And then when they were asking her about Alexa Grasso too, and the things that Grasso has said leading up to it, she goes, yeah, I know her fears, and she knows them too. And sometimes, man, she is so cold. Like, I kind of wish she would go full heel at some moments, like what Chael Sonnen said. Cody Garbrandt's acting like he doesn't have a chip on his shoulder, but I have to imagine he's got one, because this guy is, Cody Garbrandt should not lose to Trevin Jones. And one thing I thought was strange, and I don't know if anybody else picked it up, but when they were asking him about the opponent switch, and they said short notice, he immediately got defensive, and he said, yeah, I've seen that people keep saying this. He's like, it's not short notice. He had 5 weeks to prepare. He's like, that's not short notice. 2 weeks tops is short notice. He's like, he almost had a full camp. If you can't get ready to fight in 5 weeks, then you shouldn't be here. And then he says, he goes, yeah, I was training the whole time for a southpaw. So when the UFC called me with a list of opponents, I asked if we could do Trevin Jones because he's a southpaw, and the UFC obliged, which means like they're really, I swear to God, they're trying to get Cody Garbrandt a win, and Trevin Jones all but said as much too, so he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder there as well. Dricus du Plessis, I don't know if anybody noticed this, dude, but when he got asked about the things that he likes to do in Vegas, he said pizza and beer, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But before he did that, he went like this. Now, coincidence? Maybe. Or He's a fucking cokehead. We'll see. I don't know. He seems like the kind of guy that might be on on a night off. A little wild party guy. He said that he likes to party quite a bit. But he seemed a little disrespected that him and Derek Brunson were on the prelims, whereas Bo Nickel and Jamie Pickett were on the pay-per-view. And in fairness, I understand why they would be. Because Bo Nickel's a huge star. And in fairness, dude, you're going to get more eyeballs if you're fighting on the prelims, because the amount of people that watch the prelims compared to the amount of people that buy the pay-per-view are not comparable. Like, you know what I mean? That number significantly plummets. Not every single person watching the prelims will buy the pay-per-view. Only degenerates like myself will do that, no matter what the pay-per-view is. But yeah, he didn't like that. And then it was funny because they asked Derek Brunson about it, and he goes, I get to shower and watch the rest of the fights. I don't care. We don't get paid more. And I was like, okay, that was good. And then we had Bo Nickel come out there. Bo Nickel came out before John Jones. They said, have you had a chance to meet John Jones? He said, yeah. Wait, one more thing about Cody Garbrandt. This bugged me a little bit, and I can understand why he would not be willing to just... So they asked him about what they thought, or what he thought, rather, about TJ Dillashaw retiring. And he said, what I think we all know is that he appears to be doing the Conor McGregor USADA retirement. And now I thought that was funny, and I was glad that somebody like Cody Garbrandt was able to think of that without being like, duh, but he did. And so he brought it up, and I went, okay, that's awesome. And then, he said a few things that were negative about TJ, said he looked like shit in his last performance, and that he doesn't think it's a coincidence that now that, he's been caught, that his performances are diminishing, even though he hasn't been tested very much, or wasn't tested very much leading up to that Aljamain Sterling fight. So apparently he, according to USADA, if you only got a little bit and you're cycling off, so if TJ knew when he was being tested, then he probably could have gotten away with it regardless. But then a few minutes later, he gets asked about John Jones, and he goes on praising John Jones about how he's the greatest of all time, and he's, it's so awesome to be on a card. And how can you, I know there's a history there, but why are you so quick to shit on TJ Dillashaw? Which I would be as well, but I would also keep that same energy. John Jones has tested positive more than anybody, ever. And nobody's willing to bring it up, except one guy that I will get to in a minute. But Bo Nickel and John Jones. So Bo Nickel comes up there, and he gets asked if he meets John Jones and what it means to him to be on the same card as like the greatest of all time and this and that. And he said that him and John Jones had a wrestling match. And people asked him, well, how did it go? And he goes, well, it didn't go well for John Jones. It was just straight wrestling. He had a pretty good grip, but I was able to, do this, and then I rolled around to his back and blah, blah, all this shit. And I was like, okay, goddamn, dude. Like, I know he's an amazing wrestler, and that's an understatement. He's like one of the best wrestlers the United States has ever seen. He is still a middleweight, right? John Jones is like, 250-something pounds? So the fact that a guy could out-wrestle a dude who he's potentially 70, 60 pounds lighter than is pretty impressive, to say the least. And it makes me think, or it was making me think, that perhaps John Jones's movement is compromised, because his scrambling ability was phenomenal at one point, and probably, maybe it still is, but a little slower. Because I was rewatching his fights with Daniel Cormier, and in the second fight, they both managed to get takedowns on one another, but they both scrambled out of it. And I thought, dude, if he can wrestle fuck DC, like, how is Bo Nickel not letting him get shit on it? And I was thinking this, and then John Jones comes up there, and they ask him about it, and he started laughing, and he's like, there was no wrestling match. Ha ha ha, there was no wrestling match. We just, shook hands and then got down in the wrestling position and then began to slowly explain perhaps a wrestling match. Like, it was like what Michael Bisping does, where he says the same thing 3 times, but with different words, and it all means the same stuff. John Jones was like, there was no wrestling match, but we shook hands, we got down in the wrestling position, and then proceeded to talk about them maybe doing some wrestling. And I went, okay. So maybe he just doesn't want to admit that Bo Nickel whooped him in that regard, or maybe Bo Nickel's just like doesn't understand the culture of not bragging about training. I could see that being the case, and I don't like John Jones, but I could see it being the case that this is a Bo Nickel issue and not a John Jones issue, because there is new guys won't necessarily understand it. If you go to a gym for the first time and you spar with one of their high level guys and you do well against them, right? You land some shots or you hurt them or even rock them at one point or whatever. You know, guys that aren't familiar with the way that the culture works there, they'll go brag about that. That's not, you shouldn't do that. Training's training. Like, you know what I mean? We're all trying to get better. You shouldn't be bragging about that shit. And, you know, usually once somebody's been doing it for a while, they understand that. So I thought maybe, well, Bo Nickel's just like hyped as fuck to be here, like Kamaru Usman said to Ben Askren, you're up here with all your favorite fighters. And, you know, maybe he's just looking for reasons to, like, big up himself. He doesn't seem like that kind of guy, if I'm being honest. Like, I haven't gotten any overly arrogant vibes from him, but it's just weird that they had completely conflicting stories, kind of, because John Jones kind of said that they wrestled, but not that they had a wrestling match, whereas Bo Nickel said they had a wrestling match and he won. So it was a kind of a weird moment. And then the highlight for me, the main event of this media day, my last point, Mike Bone, or Bon, however you say it, from MMA Junkie. And now I've been critical of MMA Junkie in the past regarding on, you know, maybe some of their more woke tendencies, the way that they report on certain things and certain stories that they pursue and how hard they pursue it, and just, you know, things like this. And but Mike Bone first asks John Jones the first hard question. He says, you know, you said that you were cleared of everything. You tweeted it. What can you elaborate and tell us what you mean by that? And it's hilarious watching John Jones go from pretending to be the nicest guy to ever live ever to just like that. You can see it in his eyes, man. I hate when he acts like this. It's so fucking fake. And he fools so many people. I see so many people in the comment sections being like, oh, wow, such good energy. He seems so much more all this shit. Have you guys not watched the last, like, 5 fucking pre-fight press conferences of this guy? He overly kisses the media's ass. Like, he overly polite, you know, just, like, cringe shit, too. It's just, like, I don't know, man. That's not John Jones. That's the guy that John Jones wants you to think he is. But that is not John Jones. That kind of guy that, you know, acts like that overly to that extent is the kind of guy that hits a pregnant woman in his car and fucking runs away. Okay? He's projecting an image of himself that is not true. And I think it's because it's like when, you know, it's like, you know that somebody may have caught you in a lie, so you try to keep talking, you know, to just move on from that point. I feel like that's what John Jones does when he's being this like overly happy and nice and shit. He knows he's got so many fucked up things about him and that so many people could be critical that he tries to give you like no reason to be, so he's just way overly nice. But he's not a nice guy. I mean, I'm sure if you've met him, he can be a nice guy, but he is not a nice person or a good person. How about that? Okay. And yeah, dude, I'm still ragging on John Jones. I fucking don't like him. But Mike Bone asked this about his drug tests. And John Jones goes on this huge rant about how he's happy that it happened to him because other guys may not have been able to afford it. And, you know, other guys, this would have broke other guys and this and that. And I'm like, dude. And then he talks about how, you know, since the rule has changed, his fights should be changed to no contest, or his no contest should be changed to a win. And that he has technically never tested positive in his life, and he always knew his innocence. John, that is not what that means. That's not what that means. It means that you cycled off enough when you got tested to the point where there was a small amount found in your system. Okay, you're not innocent. You were doing steroids because otherwise it wouldn't have been in your fucking system, because that's not how steroids work. And secondly, the rule was the rule at the time. Like, dude, this argument is so fucking stupid. The rule was what the rule was, and you broke it. Just because the rules changed fucking 6-7 years later, 6-7 years later, or whatever the fuck, doesn't mean you're innocent. I don't understand that argument whatsoever, or like even that logic. Like, who the fuck is telling him that? Okay. And now also, people are forgetting that the picogram shit was only like the most recent times he's popped. When he popped previously, it was not picograms. This picogram thing was not a fucking narrative until the Gustafsson fight, leading up to the Gustafsson fight, because that's when they had to move an entire event from Vegas to California because Vegas wouldn't let John Jones fight because he had tested fucking positive. We never heard about picograms until leading up to that fight. And then Jeff Nowitzki went on the Joe Rogan podcast and they did interviews with Dana White all over the place trying to explain it's like a pinch of salt in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. No one even knows what a pictogram is. Maybe not, but we know that it can't get in your system without you doing steroids, you fucking retard. Okay? And all of the other times before that, which if you can't remember, there were a few, he had popped. They were not picograms. Okay? Also, it's hilarious that the number that he keeps popping for is 80 and they raise the threshold to 100. And then somebody like Jesse on Fire, who I said in my last video I like quite a bit, but can't understand how this isn't a bigger story, especially because John Jones is coming back. And I was like, the only reason this is a story is because John Jones is coming back. If John Jones was not coming back, they would have never changed the rules. So I don't know why that argument keeps getting made, but that's okay. And then Mike Bone asks the second hard question of the whole thing, and it is, he asked John Jones about what happened in Vegas when he beat his wife. And John immediately, next question, just ignored him completely. Which is like, dude, you're a bitch. You beat up your wife, fucking talk about it. Or at least make up some bullshit excuse. Give us your normal fucking bullshit God answer that you do. And Mike Bone did it very intelligently because he's aware what John Jones will do if he doesn't like the questions that you're asking him. So Mike Bone said, I want to ask him this question, but I'm not going to do it till it's my last question, because as soon as I do, he's not going to want to talk to me anymore. Give him the Luke Thomas treatment. And so he waited, and it was his very last question, and John just like immediately, nope, next question. Nope, next question. And then looked pissed for the rest of the time there. Dude, the argument that he has never tested positive because the rule has been changed now is one of the most brain dead takes you could ever have. The rule was there when he tested positive. He tested positive. They changed the threshold now. Good for them. They just all but said you're allowed to fucking do steroids as long as you have cycled off enough when we come to test you. That's what that means. It doesn't mean that he's innocent. So stop saying that. And stop believing him when he says that. And also, dude, he says, people wouldn't have been able to afford the lawyers and this and that. I don't remember him ever fighting this in court. Ever. USADA changed the fucking rule. Done deal. John didn't change the fucking rule. John's lawyers didn't change the fucking rule. And like Luke Thomas has a very nuanced take on steroids. Even he said something stupid. He said, they realized that it was unscientific or whatever. And it's like, no, they didn't. They realized that one of their biggest stars was coming back. One of their biggest stars who cannot stop testing positive for steroids. So we're going to raise the threshold so that even if he does test positive, hopefully it'll be under the new threshold. Actually, you know what probably happened? They probably went and tested him and also they were not going to be reporting it if he tests with picograms because it's not a violation anymore. So we will never know. But leading up to this, they could have been testing him leading up to this fight, realizing that he's testing positive for this amount of whatever picograms in his system. So they went, we need to raise the threshold a bit. I guarantee you that's what happened. Just so that there wasn't another controversy regarding John Jones, because that would not look great right now. But yeah, that's my take on UFC 285 Media Day, the storylines that I pulled out of there, the things that I found interesting. Let me know in the comments if you thought so as well, which stories you think are significant or not, which ones you think I'm reaching on. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. I'll thank you in advance once again. Thank you so much for your subscription. I will see you at the next video. Bye-bye.